Good evening. The Planning Commission meeting of December 15, 2021 is called to order. Due to COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Planning Commission meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The Planning Commission meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meeting also streamed live in high definition on the city's website, glendaleca.gov//live, on youtube.com, myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate persons. Current Planning Commission agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Tarachian.
Here.
Commissioner Fuentes.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Shabazian.
Here.
Chairperson Manassian.
Here. Can I have the report for the agenda,
Yes.
please?
The next item on the agenda is regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the December 15th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Planning Commission was posted on December 9th, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Can we have approval for the last meeting, please?
So moved. Move to accept.
Second, if need be.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners? Nope. Okay, so let's go to agenda. Staff?
Yes, so the first item under new business, item 7A, is a tentative track map located at 3510 North Verdugo Road. Case planner Vilya Zematitis is here and will give a brief overview before the public hearing. I'm pulling up the.
Do we have any phone calls for this?
At the moment, we have no phone calls.
No phone calls.
Good evening, Chairman Ossian, Planning Commissioners. The matter before you this evening is a tentative track map approval for a new mixed-use residential project located at 3510 North Verdugo Road, just south of Broadview Avenue. The mixed-use project consists of 14 residential units in the 2 levels with a mezzanine floor above, a ground floor commercial space featuring 2 commercial tenant spaces. The PowerPoint, if we can move that forward. Kristen, do you mind if we can advance that? Thank you. The image you see before you is an aerial image. As you'll notice, the project site is located on the easterly side of Verdugo Boulevard. To the rear is essentially an alley that is actually called Spar Boulevard. And east of that, you'll notice the Montrose Community Park and residential uses. The uses, this would be a land use map showing commercial uses highlighted in pink or a salmon color. So you'll notice that all of the lots along Verdugo, North Verdugo Boulevard, are commercial. Many of the ones on Broadview are also commercial, and the ones to the east, highlighted in yellow, orange, and dark brown, would be a combination of single-family and multifamily residential. The green, you'll notice, is the Montrose Community Park. The property itself is zoned C3 Height District 1, which has a maximum height of 50 feet. And residential uses are permitted in the C3 zone in compliance with the R1250 standards. So you'll notice that this particular project has ground floor spaces along the frontage, and you have residential units set back. The project itself required variance approvals for lot coverage and for the residential patios to be essentially in the street front setback. Variances were approved by the planning hearing officer back on September 11th, 2018, and the design review board approved the design of the project back on April 11th, 2019. The project is currently in plan check, and there was a small storage building on site that has currently been demolished, and the project site is being prepared for construction. You'll notice here that this would be the view looking easterly on Verdugo. To the north is Andy's Storage, which is, again, a relatively taller, bulkier building. It's existing. To the south, it's a combination of 1- and 2-story commercial buildings. The roadway itself along Verdugo is 110 feet wide, so it's a very substantial roadway. There's on-site parking, 3 levels in each direction, and it is the major arterial for north-south transit traffic. Excuse me. Here you'll notice is the actual tentative track map itself, which would be recorded if approved. This would be a rendering facing northeast along Verdugo Road. You'll notice again the 2 commercial tenant spaces on the ground floor. There is a 2-way driveway bisecting the commercial spaces leading to the at-grade commercial parking. And the residential units are set back to meet the R1250 standards, though the patios themselves are located directly above the commercial spaces. This is a view of the project looking southeast along Verdugo, same street front elevation. And this would be the rear elevation fronting the community park. And you'll notice that there is a 2-way driveway on the south side that leads to the subterranean parking for the project for the residential unit components. There's also a common open space directly on the north side that is landscaped. The project fully complies with all of the parking requirements, the open space requirements, the landscaping, and the overall height. It is a 3-story with mezzanine, and it complies with the residential height maximums of 41 feet from the average top curb. The staff report went into great detail with regards to a zoning compliance and also the general plan land use elements, traffic and circulation elements, and the other elements of the general plan. Project was found to be consistent with all, and staff is recommending approval with 15 conditions. That concludes staff's brief presentation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
And if I may just jump in, I believe Mr. Matitis has a corrected motion for the commission.
There is a corrected motion. Before I go into the corrected motion, I do want to mention that there was an initial study that was prepared for the project and circulated for the required 20-day review period. That initial study, the associated final negative declaration, was actually adopted by the planning hearing officer as part of the standards variance review. It was also recognized by the design review board and was included in your staff packet as well. The corrected motion, the motion that was attached, there was a typo, and it included some of the planning commissioners' names preemptively. That has been since amended, and so we put forward for your motion a staff recommendation to approve with the 50 conditions.
Any questions, commissioners? No? Okay, can we get a motion, please?
If you'd like to, the applicant is online, if you want to open the public hearing, if you'd like to hear from the
Sure,
applicant.
yeah, I can, definitely.
Okay,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Hike, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Yeah, this is Haik Mardirosyan. I'm the tract engineer. I prepared the map, and as Vilya explained it very well, this is 16 units, 2 commercial and 14 units residential. It's been constructed. I mean, we are still in plan check and we're in RTI, and pretty soon we will be able to pull our building permit and start construction. This property is located in a C3 zone and is we are in compliance with all the requirements of the R250 and C3 requirements, and we will comply with all the 15 conditions set by planning. And we are asking for your blessing to approve this project. If you have any question, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Any questions? No? No? I guess no questions. Yes, let's
I'm
make a
sorry, at
motion.
this time, we can entertain a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second.
And I have a motion by Chair Commissioner Krakchian. Apologies, I'm still in Design Review Board mode. By Commissioner Krakchian, a second by Commissioner Lee. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Krakchian,
Yes.
Board Member Fuentes, or Commissioner Fuentes.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Shabazian,
Yes.
and Chair Manassian.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0 to approve the condominium track map. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item B. This item tonight is the proposed general plan amendment for the housing element. And I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Eric Kraus to make an introduction and introduce our consultant and get the presentation started.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Manasseh and members of the Planning Commission. Staff is before the Commission tonight to present the update to Glendale's housing element for the 6th cycle RENA Housing Needs Assessment, or RENA for short. This is for the years 2021 through 2029. Draft of the element was released to the public on November 1st of this year and was sent to the state clearing, I'm sorry, state, I'm thinking CEQA right now, the State Housing and Community Development Department for review on November 2nd. To date, we have received 6 comment letters that have been addressed in the most recent draft that was included in your packet tonight. And there were 3 additional comment letters were received after the agenda packet was completed, so we've included those and sent those all to you in an email earlier this week. And we've provided one particular comment letter at the dais for you guys to take a look at tonight as well. The city's consultant, Amanda Tropiano with De Novo Planning Group, will provide the commission with a presentation that will go over the draft housing element, including changes made based on comments received. Staff will continue to review all comments and present any changes in our recommendations to the City Council at the adoption hearing scheduled for January 25th of 2022. One comment in particular that I wanted to point out was submitted by Abundant Housing. That was related to credits that the city was using towards the sixth cycle RENA allocation, Unfortunately, the draft element released on November 1st erroneously included sites that were counted towards meeting the RENA for the 5th cycle housing element. This error has been corrected in the draft element submitted for Planning Commission review tonight. Staff also made several changes to the list of available sites based on the comments received and at community meetings held on October and November of 2021. I did want to point out a couple of additional CEQA issues, well, not issues, but in terms of exemptions that the project would also comply with, in addition to what was included in the staff report in the agenda, which was State CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3. The project's also exempt under state guidelines Section 15283 for housing need allocation, and it's also exempt pursuant to Government Code Section 65584 of the state's housing code. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Amanda, who will go over the updated housing element in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Amanda Tropiano, a principal with De Novo Planning Group. I have a brief presentation to share with you tonight to highlight the components of the 2021 to 2029 draft housing element, and look forward to answering any questions you may have following the presentation. So the housing element is a required component of a city's general plan. Every city and county in the state of California is required to have a housing element. And this is the only element of a agency's general plan that has a statutory timeframe to be updated. And in particular, a city's housing element must be updated every 8 years. And another unique quality of the housing element is that it's the only element of your general plan that is subject to a very thorough state review as part of the preparation of the housing element prior to adoption by the City Council. The State Department that is responsible for that review is the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. HCD both sets the regional housing needs allocation, or your RHNA, as well as reviews and certifies or approves each agency's housing element. The intermediary between HCD at the state and local agencies is a regional planning organization. Here in Southern California, the majority of agencies are under the jurisdiction of the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. So SCAG works as a conduit between the state and local agencies to distribute the statewide regional housing needs allocation to each individual jurisdiction. So starting at the state level, the state's determined that there's a housing need of approximately 4 million units over the next 8 years. SCAG received an allocation from that of about 1.3 million units and distributes it using a state-approved methodology to each of its member agencies. They are the sixth cycle, or the 2021 to 2029 housing element cycle for jurisdictions in the SCAG region, had a target due date of October 15th of 2021, with a state-mandated extension of 120 days, which brings us to February 15th of 2022. That grace period is provided in state law to allow jurisdictions to prepare, circulate, and adopt their housing elements during that time. The housing element must also be consistent with other regional plans and programs, and work in coordination with those efforts. So every 8 years, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, it estimates a region's housing needs for all income levels, and we'll spend a few more minutes talking about that in a little bit. Again, you'll hear me use this acronym a lot, so I wanted to make sure it was clear that your regional housing needs assessment, or your allocation, or your RHNA, this is the city's fair share of regional housing growth that needs to be accommodated in the city. So again, HCD identified a RHNA of approximately 1.3 million units for the SCAG region and distributed those units out to each member agency. The methodology that they used to distribute those units looked at a variety of factors, including connectivity to regional transit facilities, proximity to jobs, existing conditions, socioeconomic information, population trends, and a variety of other factors. Those resulted in a significantly higher allocation for the city of Glendale during this planning period than you might have seen in the past. But Glendale's done a very good job of proactively planning to accommodate growth in key areas. So while the allocation is a bit higher than the city has experienced in past cycles, again, we've put forward a plan to accommodate the city's RHNA within areas already designated for residential development. So Glendale's 2021 to 2029 RHNA is 13,425 units, and it is broken down by income category. What that means is that not all units are created equal. The state has said that we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for housing that serves the needs of households of different incomes. In particular, there are 4 main categories of income households that we look at. And the first is a very low income household. Those are earning less than 50% of the county median income. And approximately 25% of the city's RENA is identified as being allocated to this income level. The second income level is a low income household. These are households earning between 50 and 80% of the area median income, and that's about 16% of the city's allocation. Moderate income households are households earning 80% to 120% of the area median income, and again, about 16 or 17% of your overall allocation. And then the largest portion of your allocation are for above moderate income households. Those are households earning 120% or more of your area median income, and that's about 41 or 42% of the city's overall allocation. The state did provide an avenue for cities and agencies to appeal their allocation if they felt that the methodology was incorrectly applied to their jurisdiction, but that appeals process was very narrowly defined. 52 jurisdictions in the SCAG region did file an appeal of their RENA, and only 2 were partially granted. From that redistribution of approximately, again, 1.3 million households in the SCAG region, only 3,132 were reallocated back among the entire SCAG region. And so the takeaway from this is that the RENA was a very methodical process. And the appeals process is very narrowly defined, and the city's RENA was maintained at that 13,400 figure. So in a housing element, we need to address a number of state requirements and ultimately set the stage for a plan that guides the development of new housing and the preservation of existing housing in a way that reflects the community's vision for the future of Glendale. So a housing element needs to look at the existing housing needs of your community, examines your existing housing inventory, assesses fair housing practices, identifies constraints to housing, including government constraints, things that the city has control over, as well as non-government constraints, things that the city has less control over, an analysis of available resources. This includes things like physical resources, land, but also financial or administrative resources, and then includes a set of goals, policies, and programs that help guide decision-making over the next 8 years. As part of the public engagement program for the housing element, the city has dedicated a project website, glendaleplan.com, to serve as the primary means to distribute information and solicit input from the community. All information available on the project website is available on the city's website as well. The city also hosted a virtual open house online, including a survey, which received over 300 responses. The survey was conducted in multiple languages and is summarized and included as an appendix to the housing element. The city also hosted an in-person open house in August, corresponding with other planning projects to create connections between the work of the housing element and other work that the city is undertaking. Numerous advertisements on social media, direct outreach to key stakeholders and those individuals that have signed up for notifications on the project website, briefings to the city council, presentations to the community, particularly in regards to this draft housing element, and then facilitating that 30-day public review period for the draft. And the comments received have been responded to and included as part of your package tonight. The housing element is essentially broken down into 2 main parts. The first part is called the housing plan. This is approximately the first 50 pages or so of the housing element. This includes the goals and policies, programs, and a list of quantified objectives that the city's committed to undertaking over the next 8 years. Part 2 is the background report. The background report looks at the city's progress towards meeting its 5th cycle or prior 8-year cycle programs, an assessment of the housing needs, the analysis of constraints, identification of available resources, and a new requirement to assess fair housing. 2 appendices have also been provided. The first is a list of the sites identified to accommodate the city's RENA by income level. This includes specific parcel characteristics, including assessor parcel number, size, zoning, general plan designation, and the number of units identified as being able to be accommodated at the site. And again, this has been updated in response to the public comments received during that 30-day public review period. Appendix B is a summary of the outreach completed as part of this work, including a description of the activities, copies of advertisements and presentations, a thorough summary of the outcome of the community survey, and has been updated to include comments from public during the public review period. And as we receive additional comments, Appendix B will continue to be updated as relevant. So looking specifically at the first part of the housing plan, this again includes the goals, policies, and programs. And this is pretty similar to the structure of some of your other general plan elements. A goal is really an affirmative statement of something that the city aspires to be. So it should be aspirational, but it should be realistic. And it really is a long-term vision for where we'd like to go. The policies are actions. They are typically short statements that start with a verb that direct the city to commit to do something to help implement the goal. And then finally, the housing programs. Programs are very detailed action items that we can measure progress towards each year. The city is required to analyze the progress towards meeting these programs on an annual basis. And the programs included in the housing plan identify funding sources, responsible agencies, and key objectives in order to measure progress. The 2021 to 2029 housing plan includes 6 goals, and all of these goals were included in your current housing element, so the one that guided the last 8 years. Again, this is pretty typical because your goals should be visionary, they should stand the test of time, and these continue to be relevant in guiding the direction of housing in Glendale for the next 8 years as well. But where changes were made include specifically to the policies and programs. So the proposed housing element includes many of the city's current policies from your current housing element and includes 43 of them and carries those forward in the new housing element. It introduces 11 new policies that are really in response to the feedback collected from the community, as well as input from the state regarding compliance with state legislation and other best practices in terms of planning to accommodate the city's regional housing need. And then same kind of philosophy with programs. There continues to be a number of really excellent programs that the city already implements to address its housing needs. These include things like the city's inclusionary housing ordinance, the work that the city is already doing for development of affordable units, including direct payments, rental rights programs, fair housing issues. All of those absolutely continue to be included in the new housing element as well, because they're working well and are still relevant for the community. But the city has introduced 11 new programs, again, to really recognize the additional input the community provided and respond to state legislation. So tonight's presentation is really going to focus on the new policies and programs. And I just wanted to recognize that the city is doing really great work in this arena already, and those programs and policies will continue to be maintained in the new element. So looking specifically at the new policies. So the first goal is related to a city with a wide range of housing types to meet the needs of current and future residents. We've added 5 new policies to this goal regarding maintaining adequate capacity to accommodate the city's RHNA, recognizing the role of underdeveloped residential sites, the role of accessory dwelling units in expanding the city's housing stock, opportunities to capitalize on innovative infill development design strategies, and the reuse of sites that have been identified in previous housing element inventories. Goal 2 envisions a city with a high-quality residential neighborhood that are attractive and well-designed. And 1 new policy has been added to this goal to measure and address the effects of new development as it relates to your existing neighborhoods. The third goal looks at a city with increased opportunities for affordable and special needs housing. And 3 new policies have been added there, encouraging the city to utilize new tools to help facilitate development, recognizing the excellent work that the city has been doing in promoting workforce housing opportunities in Glendale, and then additional regulatory incentives that may be possible to help further these housing goals. Goal 4 looked at a city with services that address groups with special needs, and no new policies have been added here. Goal 6 identifies a city with equal housing opportunities for all persons, and 2 new policies have been added to monitor and respond to the regulatory environment, and to solicit additional meaningful public input. And the final goal is a city with housing that is livable and sustainable, and no new policies have been added here. The housing programs, again, respond largely to the goals outlined in the prior slides and are organized into topic areas. There are 2 new topic areas, the first one and the last one, talking about maintaining adequate sites and removing constraints. The topic areas in the middle are those that are included in your current housing element and really guide the programmatic approach currently. So again, I'll be focusing primarily on the new programs that are identified in the housing element. So within adequate sites, of course, this is one of the new areas. So all of the programs are new. We've included programs to address land use policy and development capacity, maintaining adequate sites, the way that the city disposes of public property if surplus property is identified in the future, the replacement of existing affordable units, and then a program looking at adaptive reuse of non-residential structures as well as accessory dwelling units. The second strategy is the preservation and enhancement of the city's existing housing stock. 5 programs are already currently included in this topic, and no new programs were added. Strategy 3 looks at the production of affordable and special needs housing. There are 5 programs for that topic, and no new ones were added. Strategy 4 looks at rental assistance. 1 current program has been modified and maintained. There are a lot of interrelated programs here, so I also just wanted to draw your attention to program 2E, which also discusses rental assistance. No new programs have been added. Increased ownership opportunities is strategy 4, and there is strategy 5, and there's 1 current program that's been modified and maintained, and a new program added to explore the tenant and community opportunity to purchase. Housing services is strategy 6, 3 existing programs and no new ones have been added. Strategy 7 is fair housing. This had 1 current program that's been modified and kept, and then 2 new programs have been added to study anti-displacement evaluation to ensure that new development isn't negatively affecting existing residents, and a program dedicated specifically to affirmatively furthering fair housing. Strategy 8 revolves around sustainability. It includes 4 programs and no new ones have been added. And then finally, the last strategy, again, is a new one to remove constraints. And we've included 2 programs there to measure and monitor changes in state law, at the state federal law to ensure compliance with state regulations. And then a number of specific amendments that are required to your current zoning code in order to comply with existing state legislation regarding housing. All right, so that was a mouthful, but I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the sites and talk specifically about the city's role and requirements in planning to meet its housing allocation. So first and foremost, the city of Glendale itself does not build housing. You are not responsible for building housing. You are not a builder. You are not a developer. It is the city's job to demonstrate that there is enough land in the community zoned for housing to accommodate your arena at all those different income levels, but you are not responsible for building the housing, nor are you penalized if housing isn't produced. The private market is responsible for building both affordable and market rate housing. The sites identified to accommodate the city's arena are called your housing sites, and these are the sites that you've identified as being appropriate for residential development in the future and where new housing could occur consistent with your zoning and land use designations. So the city has the opportunity to really set the stage for housing developers to build projects in line with your general plan, your zoning ordinance, and other planning documents like your specific plans. So when we look specifically at housing sites, we talk about the word acceptable a lot because there are a lot of requirements that we must consider in identifying housing sites to ensure that they are acceptable sites according to state laws, guidance regarding the quality and criteria of sites that we can include in a housing element. So we need to look at 4 primary characteristics. We need to look at the existing site condition. Is it occupied or is it vacant? And there's not a whole heck of a lot of vacant land left in Glendale. It's mostly occupied. So Additional analysis is required to demonstrate the feasibility of those sites. We need to look at the realistic capacity. So we can't just look at the maximum allowable density. We need to look at how projects are actually being developed in the community and identify a realistic capacity for each site. We need to look at site size. Specifically, we must look at sites to accommodate the lower income RENA that are between half an acre and 10 acres. Sites smaller or larger are deemed to be inappropriate to accommodate the city's lower income RENA. And then we also need to look at proving a history of successful similar developments. And we can look both internally to the city and to the region. So considering all of those factors, the city needs to develop a strategy to accommodate its 13,400 unit allocation for the 6-cycle RENA period. So again, we need to look at lots of different opportunities to address that need. So first, we look at credits. Those are projects that are constructed or under constructed during the planning period, and that starts on July 1st of 2021. We can look at existing multifamily units that have been converted to deed-restricted affordable units, which is an opportunity that the city of Glendale has taken advantage of during this planning period. So we're able to count a portion of those units towards the city's 6-cycle RENA. And we can also look at projects that are approved and not yet under construction. Those are credits. And again, we did receive some public comments on ensuring that the credits identified in the housing element are accurate. We have gone through and updated that based on the most current information and ensured that the projects are allocated either as progress towards the city's 5th cycle, your prior cycle, or to your 6th cycle as appropriate based on that time frame. And then we're left with what we call a remaining RENA after we take away those credits, and we need to look at sites to accommodate that remaining RENA. So there are 6 primary opportunities here in Glendale that we've explored. The first are projects that are under consideration, but they're not yet approved. But we have a reasonable expectation that they would be brought forward for consideration. The second are accessory dwelling units and the potential future development of those over the 8-year planning period. We can look at the very limited number of vacant residential sites available in the community. These are unoccupied, undeveloped sites. And then we look primarily at 2 types of underutilized sites: underutilized residential uses that are built significantly below the maximum allowable density, and underutilized sites designated for mixed-use development, primarily along the corridors along San Fernando. And then finally, sites located in the downtown specific plan. Shown on a screen is a summary of the updated RENA strategy that reflects the corrected credits, updated sites inventory, and all of the city's response to those public comments received during the public comment period. And it demonstrates the available capacity within each of these strategies. The city's identified approximately 2,072 credits at all income levels that can be deducted from the city's overall RENA, leaving the city with a remaining RENA to accommodate of about 11,353 units. You can see the proposed projects account for about 782 of those units, ADUs 1,200, 37 units possible on vacant residential sites, 2,600 possible on underutilized sites, about 1,500 on underutilized mixed-use sites, and about 6,500 in the downtown specific plan area. Overall, these sites demonstrate that there is a surplus of available capacity to serve the needs of all income levels, with an overall surplus of about 9.7%. And finally, the housing element does include a section specifically dedicated to fair housing. This is a new requirement in accordance with AB 686 that requires every city to include as part of their housing element update an analysis of fair housing issues and a comparison of the housing issues in your community to the region. We need to look at topics such as diversity, persons with disabilities, female-headed households, patterns based on median household income, ethnic or racial concentrations, or transit opportunity indices. And we need to look at that in the context of those sites identified to accommodate your RENA. So how do the sites, where are the sites located in relation to these different patterns? And is the city making decisions that would help to affirmatively further fair housing? So sites located in the city's 6-cycle inventory are distributed in areas of a variety of opportunity sites. Looking specifically to the screen is an exhibit pulled from the housing element of the TCAC Opportunity Area Map. TCAC is an indicator of different types of levels of opportunity to access to education, economy, environmental constraints or burdens, and it consolidates that information into scores ranging from low opportunity to highest opportunity. Areas of low opportunity are shown kind of in light yellow or red, and then areas of highest opportunity are in the darker blues. You can see that the sites identified to accommodate the city's RENA are in a variety of opportunity areas, primarily in the moderate opportunity areas, including some though in areas of lower opportunity or in areas of high segregation and low opportunity. The intent here is really to recognize the positive benefits that new development can have in improving the quality of life and conditions for areas and really stimulating both public and private investment into some of these neighborhoods that need some special attention to help really transform into areas of higher opportunity. Additionally, ADUs, while not shown exactly on the map, are permitted in all residential areas, including areas of highest opportunity. And new development is really concentrated in areas along the corridors and near transit, really to provide a more livable, walkable, and healthy lifestyle for persons of all incomes and backgrounds. And that new investment can really help to improve the quality of life of both current and future residents. Again, just an additional exhibit showing the proximity to transit. As you can see on the screen, the majority of sites are located within a half-mile of a planned or existing transit stop, really recognizing the city's commitment to improved air quality, transit and mobility opportunities, bringing jobs and housing closer together, and providing goods and services near residents. The draft housing element was presented for a 30-day public review throughout the month of November. Emails were advertised to all interested stakeholders that were registered on the website. We've made posts to social media, made the draft available both on the project website and the city's website. We hosted a city council presentation in early November, followed by a community presentation in the middle of the month. And additional presentations have been made to community groups that have requested additional information, which we're happy to accommodate, including to the Glendale Association of Realtors and the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council. Staff continues to be available for additional presentations on request, and we're happy to make those. The city received public comments on the draft housing element, and those are included. Those that were received as part of that public review period are included in Appendix B, and we received 6 of those. And then 3 additional comments have been provided to you that were received subsequent to the 30-day review period. Changes made to the public draft in response to those public comments are reflected in red line in the draft housing element that you've been provided. So it's very clear the changes that were made in response to those comments. In particular, the sites inventory has been updated to include a contemporary list of projects identified as credits towards the city's RENA. Also, over the course of time, additional projects have been proposed or approved, and those have been reflected accordingly as well. The city did identify some additional sites in the downtown and mixed-use areas to further accommodate a portion of its RENA, and added some city-owned property as opportunity sites as well, which was in response to a public comment. We've also modified the income distribution for sites in the downtown area to recognize that a variety of household incomes are likely to locate in that area of the city. Additional information has also been provided in the Fair Housing chapter, and several programs have been updated in response to public comments, including specifically the program on TOPA and COPA. The State Department of Housing and Community Development is currently reviewing the element for compliance with state law and will provide direction as necessary in order to meet those requirements. And then subsequently, those comments will be made available to the public, to yourselves, and responded to as part of our package to planning to the City Council. The state gets another crack at reviewing it after the City Council adopts it, and HCD does have a post-adoption review period and the opportunity to provide any additional comments. So it's quite a long presentation. I absolutely appreciate you bearing with me through that and appreciate your time. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have. And of course, staff is available as well.
Very good. That was a very good presentation.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I do have one question for Amanda, or maybe to the staff. Do we reflect SB 35 into our housing element here for land use?
We do recognize the role of SB 35, and as it applies to the city of Glendale here, we don't produce any additional units through that. Again, our obligation is to actually demonstrate sites available, but we do recognize that the city is subject to certain provisions of SB 35, and that is included as a component of the housing element.
Oh, so we do have direction as to how we will approach with the SB 35 and the lot splits?
For the streamlining of affordable housing projects,
Commissioner Chang, are you referring to SB 9 in terms of the lot splits? I believe that's the.
Oh,
code
SB
section.
9? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did I get the most recent, the directions that came from the state? Yeah, is it SB 9?
Correct, yeah. So-
my apologies.
That is actually, we didn't reflect that in the housing element itself, but we've just, I believe council last night adopted an urgency ordinance for the municipal code that would essentially put that motion into effect come in January.
Oh, yes, yeah, I was referring to the lot splits. That's
But we-
SB 9,
yeah,
okay.
But in terms of credits or anything else, none of that is reflected in the housing element. We're not taking any kind of credits or assumed development under SB 9.
So it's not going to be included in this, this round of housing element?
Not in terms of actual housing production that we would be looking for towards the next 8 years.
Because that SB 9, I think, will give us an opportunity to provide more housing, correct?
That's the state's hope, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's going to work in the city of Glendale, but we would, if SB 9 projects do come forward and those end up getting developed during that 8-year period, we'll be able to use those towards meeting our RENA allocation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions as well. So can you walk us through the process of decreasing the credits that the city received? Because in the staff report that we were given, it looked like we were getting about 4,781 units that were being credited, resulting in a remaining balance of 8,644. And it was later stated in the report that our capacity as a city was 10,877 units per this housing element being proposed. In the presentation tonight, it looks like the city is receiving only 2,072 units as credit, which results in 11,353 units to develop, which is exceeding the number that was originally put into the staff report. So could you just walk us through kind of which credits were removed, what the process was that went into that based on the public comment, and whether we will be able to reach this capacity, because it wasn't the number that was put into the report we received?
Commissioner Chatrian, in terms of if you look on the staff report on page 14, Table 2 includes the revised numbers that we updated based on comments we received during the public comment period. So that's a direct reflection of the comment received from Abundant Housing that talked about the credits that we were suggesting. They said we were double counting those. Basically, those were kind of towards our 5th cycle element. So those have all been removed out of the 6th cycle, and then we've went through the whole process of the other comments we got from the Realtors Association in terms of which sites were adequate, which ones weren't. So we made some adjustments there. We also made adjustments based on the credits that we were not allowed to count as part of the 6th cycle, and then went out and looked at 4 additional sites that we could then meet our RENA number of the allocation of the 13,425. So right now we're looking at, we need an additional 11,353 units to meet that RENA. So our credits would have been the 2,072.
But the ones that were removed, and my apologies if I'm asking something that was within the lengthy report, the ones that were removed, are those, units that were converted to moderate or low income housing in 2020 and 2021, or projects that were approved towards the end of 2020? Can you kind of walk through the detail? Because I'm trying to figure out how there was a discrepancy of 2,609 units here. just for my own understanding.
I'm going to need Amanda's help a little bit on the credit for the moderate, because those were existing units that were then converted to a moderate rate income. And I believe we're still allowed to count up to 25% of those units. And Amanda can maybe explain that a little bit better. But some of the other projects were ones that were already constructed and occupied. And those were done during the current phase, which is the 5th cycle. So those we had to go in and take out. We're not really sure how they ended up in there, but we've made that correction and that adjustment. So there was a significant chunk of those projects that were included in the previous draft element that we had to strip out. There was quite a substantial number. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I can dig through here and try to dig that up for you if you're interested in the actual number. But
so I'll start with there's kind of two components. First is the discussion about the conversion of existing units from existing market rate units to deed restricted affordable units to moderate income households or lower. The original draft did identify as a credit a 1-for-1 credit. So for each of those units that were converted to a deed restricted unit, we counted the full unit. There's been additional guidance from the state to describe that a 1-for-1 credit is not possible, that there's a maximum number of units that could be credited towards a city's RHNA through that avenue of 25% of your lower or moderate income RHNA, not 25% of the units, but up to 25% of your allocation for those income levels. The city of Glendale far exceeded that. If we could count a 1-for-1 unit, we would be able to have more credit, which is what the original draft reflected. Unfortunately, the state has come back and said that is not the interpretation of this very new piece of legislation. You're only allowed to count as a 1-for-1 credit up to 25% of your allocation. So right off the top, we're not able to demonstrate the ability to count many of those units that did convert to deed restricted affordable units as a credit. So that was a point of clarification that the state had provided us in response to that particular quantification. So that's part of it. The second part is that, unfortunately, the state also doesn't make it easy for us in terms of timing. There's a calendar year that the city is required to report on through their annual progress reports. That's January 1st through December 31st. There's a planning period for the housing element. This is not consistent with the housing element adoption period. So the planning period is actually July 1st through July 1st of 2021, while the actual housing element was not due until October 15th of 2021. So there were some projects that were not reported as credits on the city's prior 2020 APR, your annual progress report, that were built and occupied specifically in early 2021 that we had previously identified as a credit because it wasn't counted in the prior APR, but the credits actually start on July 1st, not on January 1st. So we did need to make some modifications to correct those. Now, those units are still important to the city because if they were not credited on the 6th cycle, they just were retrospectively credited towards the 5th cycle. So those units still counted. It just kind of is a paper exercise in terms of which cycle they were credited towards. So instead of forward progress on the 6th cycle, it's past progress on the 5th cycle. So those units just got redistributed kind of backwards into that 5th cycle allocation. So basically we went through all of those edits, ensured that we had the most up-to-date information according to that additional state guidance and timelines, reviewed all of the specific comments and questions, and in particular had to respond to that new requirement that we were not able to count a 1-for-1 replacement for the converted units. And all of those together resulted in kind of a reduction of the credits. But you'll also see that the proposed projects number increased. So it just went from kind of the top line credit to the bottom line strategy. That number actually increased by several hundred units because new projects had been proposed during that time, and those are reflected in the proposed projects list. So we're just kind of, we're hitting a moving target with it as well. Every day projects are getting approved and considered, and they're moving up and down the list. So we're confident that today the list is accurate and we are reflecting information that's consistent with state law. Then as a result of the change in the credits in the proposed projects and additional requests that the city consider a wider variety of sites, including city-owned sites, different types of underutilized sites in the downtown area. Additional sites were also identified in response to public comments that helped increase the capacity. Again, no sites are being proposed for rezoning, upzoning, or redesignation. These are all sites currently designated for residential uses. We're just identifying kind of the best to accommodate the city's RENA. There are a lot of sites that could accommodate additional development that aren't included in the list at all. Again, sites that are smaller than half an acre, sites that require certain more cumbersome permitting processes. We aren't able to include, and many other sites that maybe we just don't have a crystal ball and know will redevelop over the next 8 years. So there's actually a lot of additional capacity that could be explored. We just kind of tailored that final list of sites to demonstrate the city's ability to accommodate its RENA. So those really resulted in some additional sites, primarily in the downtown specific plan, but some additional sites in the mixed use areas as well, also reflecting kind of a more equitable income distribution, which again was a response to a public comment.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. I think just part of my concern in how the revisions were done and the methodology that went into place for these revisions were that the city's not getting credited towards the new cycle for these units that are in the interim. Yet we were one of few cities within LA County that actually did well to meet the requirements of the last cycle. And we're also one of few cities that are doing well to bring on moderate housing units through conversion of existing units. And I feel as if that the methodology and how both of those were weighed by whether it was through the state is in a sense to the detriment of the city. And on top of that, in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that our connectivity and proximity to jobs means a larger allocation of this housing cycle. And I guess my curiosity is, did that apply to our neighboring cities that, didn't do as well to meet their numbers that also share the same description? So those are just, I guess it's not a specific question, but my concerns with kind of the logic that went behind the methodology. And now, we're going to have to build more units as a result of it once again, when we were one of few cities that actually did their job in the last cycle.
Well, I can say that I've expressed the city's position on the good work you're doing to convert units to deed restricted affordable units, and the frustration that you're committed to providing this as an opportunity for workforce housing and middle income housing, and the limitation to not be able to count a 1-for-1 unit replacement is a challenge. And so I would encourage the city to continue to advocate to its partners and legislators in Sacramento that this maybe is an opportunity that could be revisited, because cities specifically like Glendale are doing such a great job of accommodating this. So I hear you, and I feel your frustration on that.
Thank you.
I have a two-part question, actually. One of the questions is kind of a continuation of the Chairman Chakchian. What's going to happen if the neighboring cities or neighboring regions don't comply with the requirements? Do we have the city of Glendale takes a burden from them? Second question that I have is, you mentioned that the only solution we have is to remove constraints. So I'm looking at this project that we just earlier we reviewed on Verdugo. They had the DRB approval in April of 2019. That's almost 2.5 years ago. And yet still it's in the planning review. What can we do to expedite the process of this?
So I'll answer the first one and then let staff answer the second. The city is operating on its own. Your allocation is your allocation. Again, the city of Glendale is not responsible for building its 13,425 units. That is not your requirement in state law. Your requirement is to make sure that your zoning and your general plan land use descriptions allow for the private market to build those units if they want to. Whatever's happening in your neighboring jurisdictions, that's their prerogative. They also receive their own individual allocations in their mandate is the same. Prove that you have enough sites available to accommodate your unmet RENA. So 8 years from now, there'll be a whole new cycle and a whole new allocation period. Glendale will get a new allocation. You're not penalized or benefit from past progress. So it'll be a fresh slate. And at that time, new allocations will be assigned and considered. So for now, Glendale stays the course. You do what you need to do to accommodate your RENA, and every other agency is, mandated to complete the same process. So I'll turn in terms of the constraints. That is one component of the housing element, is to look at government and non-government constraints and things the city can do to help allow for additional development. And so I'll defer to staff on the specifics of that example.
Chairman Aston, regarding the project that Villy brought forward today, and she might be able to add more light to that, it's likely that it's already under construction or nearly complete. I'm not sure. Okay, so typically on the condo projects, what usually happens is they go through the process of getting entitlements, and as they're building it, they'll pull actual permits to build them as apartments, and then later come back and convert them to condominiums. So that's typically why some of the condominium projects take a little bit longer than normal. But I guess our biggest impediment to development is just the design review process and how long that takes. Many of these projects do meet zoning code. It's just a matter of getting through that DRB process. So in response to some state legislation that's out there currently in terms of making more of these projects ministerial, the planning department's currently looking at doing, what's the buzzword for this? Maybe
Objective design standards.
Yeah.
Yes, objective design standards.
Objective design standards, there you go. So stuff that we can build into our code that would then satisfy some of the objectives of design review. And that's kind of one of the ways that maybe that could be done later on down in the future in terms of reducing some of those timings.
I've done construction in Glendale, and it's just not fun. It takes a long time. So we have to come up with something, hire more people. I don't know. I'm not in charge, but we need to make it easier for.
Yeah, and then design
future
review is, an extremely important process to the community. So that's,
I agree with you.
we're
Yeah,
trying to,
design review, yeah,
trying to
that's-
come into that happy
Yes.
ground of maintaining that integrity of design review and providing some kind of relief from that through the zoning code.
Okay, very well. Do we have any?
Mr. Chair, we do have one caller.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing and I will go to the phones. Mr. Historian, you're on live with the Planning Commission. Please go ahead. I'm going to hold this one because he's called twice. So I'm going to go to the next line. Please hold. Good evening, Mr. Historian. You're on live with the Planning Commission. Please go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Greg Astorium, and I am speaking on behalf of Glendale Association of Realtors. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Commission. And let me begin by thanking Mr. Cross, his team, and the Planning Department for the production of the Glendale's Housing and Land Use Element document. We believe the work was in-depth and thorough. The purpose of my call is to really shed some more light on the document that I prepared. It's called the input chart, so that I would add value to the existing document. Now, I've examined the parcel level information that was provided in Appendix B, and really I have depended on what your consultant a couple of times referred to as acceptable and realistic capacity assumptions. With that, I will bring your attention to the first page of the input chart that I've provided. And there is a parcel, the property is identified by a parcel number that ends in 952, which I think signifies that it's owned by the city of Glendale. After a little bit further delving into this parcel, you will see that that parcel refers to the green space within the Americana, the park, where the trolley ride, the fountain, and the public park is located. The chances are that this parcel is part and parcel of the leases that Caruso Affiliated has signed with its tenants, and perhaps is part of the condo map as open space. So this parcel is not realistically designed to be developed into what the report calls, which is about 229 low-income housing units. We don't believe that that's possible. So that would reduce the number in downtown. I believe the reference was made to be around 2,800 or so by 229 units. The second one is 322 Americana Way. That's the theater in Americana. Was Pacific Theaters. After the pandemic, it changed to AMC. Again, this is designated for low income at 147 potential units. We don't believe that's a good candidate for meeting our arena numbers either. The third one, and this is the interesting part, is 200 West Broadway. That's Dick's Sporting Goods and Gold's Gym. It is being marketed for sale, and it has a net operating income of about $2,300,000 at a cap rate of 4%, hypothetically. The value of that property comes to about $1,300 per square foot. I don't believe any developer will pay 1,300 per square foot of land to develop 75 units. Again, so that's not a realistic approach to this parcel. On second page, I will just refer to 232 North Orange Avenue, that again asks for or designates it for low income at 74 units. This is the parking structure, folks. If you want to have a mutiny on your hands from the merchants in Mid-Brand, you will demolish that and build 74 units. Just doesn't make sense to do that. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but I will do one more, which is on the third page again, an APN number. That APN number belongs to a historic landmark. That's the 4-story Spanish colonial revival that is listed in the Glendale Historical Society as an asset, and that's the YMCA building. Now, perhaps the staff was referring to the little space, the sliver of parking in between and the gym itself. Just not realistic to count that as a good RENA candidate. If you were to add all of the numbers, all of the parcels that I've used this as an example, by the way, there's few more, you will see that this would reduce the number of the low or designated low-income, potential low-income housing units by about 1,400. That means the city needs to look somewhere else for that 1,400 low-income housing to be able to make up for it. I don't know how they will do it, but I appreciate you listening to what I had to say, and I would encourage staff and the consultant to have another look at these parcels and see if anything can be done about it. Unless you have any questions for me, I would say Happy New Year. Have a wonderful and safe holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Historian. All right. Any other questions from any commissioners?
This is Talin. I actually would want us to go over some of the comments that Mr. Asturian had. I actually had his list that he had provided in front of me, and I was reviewing earlier. So, and I can ask some of these questions. Some of these are a bit unrealistic, as mentioned, especially for low-income housing. And it would be great to be able to designate sites that we will actually be able to develop in the future. And I don't know if staff has a copy of that sorry about the background noise. I'm not sure if the staff has a copy of the Excel chart that Mr. Asatorian was reading.
Eric, would you like me, is this an appropriate time to answer these questions?
I think if Chairman Asting's okay with it, we can respond to
Yes.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Astorian.
please.
I'll let Amanda dig into this a little bit, but Mr. Astorian at one of our community meetings reached out to us about some of these sites that he mentioned at that particular thing. So we went and did a more combed look at our available sites. So a lot of these things that are mentioned in here, like the green space and the Americana, those have all come off of our list. So those are no longer part of what we're including in as available sites. We'll have to take a closer look at all the other ones that Mr. Astorian has mentioned in his chart, and we'll do that before we take this back to council to make sure that any other sites that we included or didn't include on here that we haven't already removed, we'll make sure to take a closer look at those. Regarding the parking lot, in planning, we kind of see parking as kind of like a waste of space on a piece of parcel. So if we were to remove any parking lots or surface parking lots or above ground parking structures, we would ask the developer to replace those parking spots to make sure that those are maintained and used by the public before we'd actually move forward with any kind of development on those sites. So I think Amanda might be able to tell you a little bit more about the whole affordability component and what the state looks for in terms of getting what's required for sites to be available to be counted towards the affordable requirement.
Sure. So I'll provide some numerical background in response to those specific parcels that have been included as part of the public comment. There are 12 parcels that were listed as warranting some further study in terms of their viability. 8 had already been removed during the revision to the draft housing element, and that's what's included in your packet here. That actually removed 1,493 units. 4 sites of the 12 have continued to be maintained on the inventory for justifications, as Eric had just mentioned. It still remains a viable site, although it is parking. There are mechanisms that could be in place to continue to provide that parking as a replacement as part of any future development. So it wouldn't necessarily preclude development. I understand the concerns about parking and providing sufficient parking. So 4 of those sites have been maintained. Those 4 sites only represent 422 of these overall units. So of those 12 that additionally, were asked to study further, 8 have already been removed from the inventory and have already been replaced with alternative sites. So, and those alternative sites have been, further studied and vetted, and those have replaced actually a capacity in excess of those units that were removed as a result of looking at some additional opportunities at smaller sites. And this is going to get me to the second part of the question about affordability levels. So the state provides something that they call a default density for each region or metropolitan area that the state says in statute, in state law. That density allows a city to determine that the site could be affordable to lower income households. It is their way of equalizing how cities approach the description of affordability, knowing that affordable projects are funded in a variety of ways, and developers are choosing sites for different reasons. So the state says in Glendale that any site designated that allows for at least 30 dwelling units per acre can be used as a site towards meeting your lower income RHNA. That doesn't mean that the site will develop as affordable housing. It doesn't mean that it must develop as affordable housing. It means that it could based on the default density. So in the downtown specific plan, projects are developing at an average of 142 dwelling units an acre. Those sites that are deemed to be adequate based on size, so over half an acre or under 10 acres, of course, there's no 10-acre parcel there, but over half an acre or under 10 acres, and meet the default density of 30 DUs an acre, which of course all of these sites do. Those sites can and should be designated to meet the city's lower income RHNA. If they develop at higher levels, the city is still obligated to maintain its RHNA. That's why we've built in a surplus. We actually identified some additional sites downtown that we feel are really good candidates that are smaller than half an acre. But because they're smaller than half an acre, even though they allow for really dense development, we can't count those as meeting a portion of the city's lower income RENA. So we've actually identified a much larger capacity downtown, but we've broken it into different income levels based on parcel characteristics. So I know that that was kind of a wordy answer, but we have addressed many of the sites already identified in the public comment warranting that further study. And again, 8 out of the 12 have already been removed from the inventory as shown in your updated housing element. The 4 sites that have been maintained, we'll continue to study and accept public comment on those, but they have been maintained in the inventory as being appropriate sites. Again, those only total 400 of the 1,800 identified for further study. So happy to answer any additional questions. And we also want to identify appropriate and available sites. So if additional public comments or property owner messages come in regarding the viability of these sites, this is a living, breathing list of sites. So it can be updated as part of this process. It can be updated as part of the city's annual progress reports. So we continue to welcome that further information about the inventory.
Thank you for the clarification and for clarifying that those that were replaced, those are that were removed were replaced with new sites.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Right. Any other phone calls? Any questions?
Mr. Chair, we have no phone calls at this time.
Okay. So, can we make a motion, please?
Before a motion has been set, I want to ask a question since we have Amanda on the call. Amanda, making policy changes, and this is just, for my own information, I'm not suggesting anything here, but changing policies based on land use on our general plan, is that something that the housing element can do? And those could be things like changing height limits in specific areas in the city, or even changing zones. Is that something the housing element is able to do, or is that something that has to be done at the land use element level and then come to the housing element? I'm just curious to know.
It is not part of the housing element. The housing element recognizes existing conditions and existing patterns of development and requirements. The housing element is not the spot that information it applies or lives. That lives in your development code and in your land use plan. Modifications to densities, height limits, parking standards, setbacks, all of that would be done as part of amendments or updates to those documents. It's not part of the housing element.
Thank you. So if anything like that were to happen, we would have to kind of plan it ahead and start making those changes. So let's say in the next cycle, we'll be able to, if we were to, we'll be able to implement those.
That would be the ideal strategy. Yes. During the next 8 years, the city's undertaking efforts as it deems fit, and then those would be reflected in your next housing element.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for staff. Will the commissioner comments from earlier in the meeting be included in our motion whenever you guys submit a report to city council, or do they need to be restated? Because regarding the RENA numbers, I don't think it's within the commission's purview to deny the housing element as a result of that, but I would like for staff and city council to revisit and discuss the methodology that went into retracting over 2,000 units and that interim period whereby we're basically losing units that are getting counted towards the last cycle, which already saw our city exceed what was required on a total unit basis, and receiving only 1/4 of an affordable unit for units that are being converted from market rate to moderate income. So could that be included within our comments to council?
Yeah, so as part of the staff report that goes before city council, we're going to include all the comments we've heard from the commission as part of the discussion in the staff report. I'm not sure if our legal team would advise that to be part of the motion or not, but we would definitely include that as part of the actual staff report that goes before the city council.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, you guys will make a motion, but general plan elements are handled by resolution, so this will be, the action tonight will be by resolution.
Staff will read the resolution, or I read the resolution.
We still need a motion and a second on the resolution. But I think what Mr. Kraus was saying is that we will capture the comments from the Planning Commission to present to City Council.
I'll move to approve the resolution.
We have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Oh, oh, okay, one of you. Okay. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll move, I guess.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, Commissioner Tarachian,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuentes,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee. Aye. Commissioner Shabazian,
Yes.
Chairperson Manassian.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Community Development Department updates. And while the Community Development Department doesn't have any updates at this time, but would like to wish the community and the commission a very happy holidays and a very happy new year.
Happy holidays to everyone, to the staff. Happy New Year.
Happy
We'll see
holidays
each
to
other,
all.
I guess, January.
Yes.
Stay
Happy
safe.
holidays. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Happy
Stay safe.
holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays, everyone. This
Can I
meeting is-
entertain a motion to adjourn then?
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
moved.
Bye-bye.
Have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks, you guys
Good
too.
night. Bye-bye.